Well, good morning, Christ Church folks. Welcome to Zoom and Facebook Live. This is our first ever virtual annual meeting. We're pretty excited about this. I'm going to give folks just a minute to hop on. And for folks who might want to watch this on YouTube, who will hear this later, we will post the meeting on YouTube shortly after we conclude. So for right now, I think we're good to go on Zoom and Facebook. Just give folks a minute. Look at that, we have 2 full screens full of wonderful Christ Church folks. That's a great virtual turnout so far. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. So everyone is on mute because this is a big group. So let's keep it like that for a while. That'll help things move along pretty quickly. Our meeting today, I think, will last somewhere between 20 and 30 minutes to give you an idea of what you've just logged onto. But it's so good to see you all on Zoom. Feel free to wave to your neighbors, say hello in the chats. Part of why we wanted to do this by Zoom is so that you all could see each other this morning. So I do want to thank you for joining us for this virtual annual meeting. I'm going to tell you the plan. So the plan is that I'll conduct the business of the meeting fairly briefly, and you'll have a chance to hear from our outgoing senior warden, Dan Carter, and also get an overview of how our parish finances are doing from our treasurer, Mallory Taylor. And I'll take a few minutes after that to give my annual report to all of you. I like to think of it a little bit like the State of the Union here at Christ Church. But after that, we're gonna try to spend some time on any comments or questions that you all have. And so if you have questions along the way or things that you would like to ask of me in particular, or perhaps financial questions or whatever, go ahead and type them into the chat feature in Zoom. Or if you're watching on Facebook, you can also type your questions into the comments. So you can use the chat and the comments function as you would like to say hello to folks and that sort of thing. But we also have our wonderful tech support crew monitoring questions. So if you do have something that is not addressed in our reports and in the course of the meeting, we'll try to get to your questions at the end. Does that sound good to everyone? It's pretty clear? Okay. So with all that, I'd like to call this meeting to order. And we will begin with an opening prayer. So let us pray. Almighty and ever-living God, source of all wisdom and understanding, be present with those who take counsel in this annual meeting for the renewal and mission of your church. Teach us in all things to seek first your glory and honor. Guide us to perceive what is right and grant us both the courage to pursue it and the grace to accomplish it through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. All right, the first order of business is the vestry election. First, I'd like to thank the outgoing members of the vestry Dan Carter, Chuck Clyott, Keith Harvey, Terry Jefferson, and Jane Wayland. Now, this group has done some pretty amazing work on the vestry for 3 years at this point, and I'm grateful for the projects that they took on and for giving me lots of good advice along the way. And in normal times, I guess you could say the work of the vestry can be fairly routine. You know, it's like working on budgets and approving projects, that kind of thing. But we all know how very different and unprecedented this year became in March. I'd like to thank the outgoing vestry members, as well as those continuing on the vestry, for their very steady leadership this year. The vestry has been a rock of support and help to me and to the staff. And they've stayed focused not only on present challenges, but also on the future of the church. And so, for example, the vestry felt strongly that repairing the decades-old water damage in the church would be an important project to get done while we're conducting worship services online. So I'd like to thank Dan, Chuck, Keith, Terry, and Jane for their leadership, support, and good cheer for 3 years, but especially in 2020. Now, as is the custom, the outgoing members served as a nominations committee for the next class of vestry members. 5 parishioners discerned a call to serve in the 5 open spots. Christ Church has a vestry of 15, and so each year 5 new members roll on as 5 roll off. So those nominated are Shannon Gitchell, Jay Jennings, Martha Jones, Foster Lee, and Catherine Pryor. So we offered online voting for the first time this year, which worked beautifully. It could be the new norm, we'll see. But I'm happy to report we had a very successful election of these 5 members. So thanks to them for their willingness to serve and to everyone who voted online. If you did vote, watch the mail for your I voted stickers. Those are coming. I would also like to take this moment to thank John Blackwood, who has served this year as junior warden. Now, the junior warden keeps their eye on the facilities. It's not a very glamorous job. It sometimes means moving pew cushions or refilling propane tanks for the heaters in the crease close, that kind of thing. But John also filled in as clerk of the vestry this year, which is less glamorous, but it is a very important job so that we have a record of these unusual times for posterity. So thank you, John, for all that you've done. I'm going to move now to talking about the staff for a moment at Christ Church. I was thinking about this, you know, usually in the annual meeting, I sort of sing the praises of the staff, but this has been a really unusual year, and I have some really kind of specific things to say. And as I was thinking about this, I thought, now, if you were to ask me what I think is the most important quality in a parish staff member, I would have to say faithfulness. It's always important, but especially in a pandemic. Now, your staff has served in remarkable ways this year. I think it stems from that abundant faith that they bring to their work, not to mention their joy, innovation, empathy, and skill. I encourage you all to read each of their annual reports to get a fuller picture of their ministries this year. Those are available on our website. I think they're going to be posted in the comments in this meeting. We will also send a full slate of reports out next week in the weekly announcements, but please read them. And you'll get a sense of what they've been up to. And they've done far too much for me to mention all of it. But I want to sing their praises for just a minute, if you'll indulge me. Let me start with Reagan. Reagan Setterfield, Associate Rector. I am so grateful to partner with him at Christ Church. He has amazing gifts for adult formation and discipleship and pastoral care and tech support, which has become more important this year. But throughout it all, he keeps us asking honest questions as a community and praying more beautifully. So sometimes that's even in Alsop Park. I would say he makes me a better priest by his example. I'm grateful for that. And I want to talk about Hannah Hooker, also an associate rector at Christ Church. She did a worship service on top of a mountain this year and helped create the best Christmas pageant ever with Marvin McLennan. And what would we do without Hannah's warmth and pastoral skills and passion for formation and liturgy? All of which they sustained me this year, and I hope they've sustained you all as well. And tech support. Honestly, I would say that serving with Reagan and Hannah feels like an embarrassment of priestly riches. So I'm very grateful. A word about our Christian formation staff. Marvin McLennan, along with Sarah Slimp, and our amazing parent volunteers. They've kept our children and youth programs in full swing this year. I commend to you that best Christmas pageant ever, which is still online if you ever need something to brighten your day. I especially want to thank Marvin for taking on so much more this year on staff, with so much willingness and enthusiasm, particularly in our online worship efforts and tech support. So we've actually changed his job description because of it, and he now has the long working title of Director of Children and Youth Ministries and Digital Media Specialist. So congrats, Marvin. And while we all look forward to coming back into church for worship together, we are committed to having our online presence continue and expand. So we'll be utilizing Marvin's leadership in that to the fullest going forward. Okay, so now music. There's a lot I could say about music at Christ Church in 2020. The pandemic has hit everyone pretty hard, but choirs have felt that loss in a particular way this year. Steve Bullock has done an amazing job of comforting us with beautiful music at a time when it's nearly impossible to sing together. And that takes skill and some deep know-how and some really talented Sunday morning and Compline singers. Now, Jane Gamble deserves a shout out for all the music she has played for us this year too. And it was particularly wonderful. As I think about my memories of 2020, one of the highlights was having Jane, Steve, and Bob Bidewell play 3 solid hours of sacred Christmas music on the organ for the holiday open house, just so that we could all experience a little Christmas cheer. One of my fervent prayers is that our choir will all be back together making a joyful noise as soon as possible. A word about the office staff. Carol Lou Flowers has kept this place humming along as she has for so long, with deep institutional knowledge and untiring good advice for me. Don't know what I would do without her. And Thomas Alexander, you might not know this, but Thomas moved away, but he has continued managing our communications from afar. And he's managed to do that seamlessly and also contribute his own innovative ideas for ministry in a pandemic. So that's been a wonderful continuing relationship, even at a distance. Some of those kinds of things are possible during COVID-19 in interesting ways. Oh, green groceries. Let's talk about green groceries for a minute. This is truly one of the success stories of 2020, a year that has seen rising food insecurity in our community. under the creative leadership of Howison Hollenberg and the dedication of the Green Groceries volunteers, the church has continued to serve fresh local food to our Green Groceries households. That took a lot of figuring out and doing in terms of how to do that safely. But the passion was so strong that we needed to keep doing it, that people figured out a way to do it safely. It took innovation and care, and the program has really thrived this year. So I really look forward to watching that program continue to grow and to nourish all of us in the process. I think we can look forward to some interesting formation opportunities for us as a whole community. Facilities, that's been an interesting one this year. Tina White is amazing. If you don't know Tina, I hope you'll get a chance to meet her and get to know her. She's part of our housekeeping team, but she has really kept this place not only clean, but like thoroughly sanitized for all those who have to be in the building. And it's a big place to take care of. She's done an amazing job. We look forward to welcoming the rest of the housekeeping team back as we start to prep for opening back up again. And I think we've got some plans to make sure our cleaning protocols are what they need to be as we get there. And the nursery staff, we miss the nursery staff. They miss our babies. This is Aquanetta Jackson, Madeline Shepard, Zayla Smith, and Teresa Donnelly. I miss seeing them along with all of your littler members of Christ Church. It'll be a joy to see that nursery come back to life again. And these amazing women they're all planning to come back and love our children as their own. Now, okay, so moving on to another point about the Christ Church staff. Celebrating the staff is bittersweet this year because of those we have lost, including 2 staff members. Betty Lee Green came to work here in 1945 and worked until just a few years ago. She will be remembered by so many of you with so much love and fondness. And of course, the Reverend Joyce Hardy, whom we also lost this year to a battle with cancer. Joyce's spirit for social justice and inclusion is still very present at Christ Church. It's her legacy, really. And I count her not only among my colleagues, but as a teacher. We have also lost parishioners too, and many of you have lost family members, friends, neighbors, and coworkers during this pandemic. So let's keep all those who are grieving in our prayers and continue to honor the memory of the saints who have gone before us at Christ Church. All right, moving along, I want to say a word about the annual reports. If you are new to Episcopal speak, the canons of the church require that we make what's called a full, accurate, and faithful statement of the temporal condition of the parish in all matters as may be needed to enable the parish to execute its full program. So that is the purpose of the written annual reports that are available now. And it's also the purpose of the reports coming up in this meeting from Mallory, our treasurer, Dan, our outgoing senior warden, and my report at the end. So we're building up to those 3 annual reports, but I want to say a word about the annual reports that are in that packet that we're linking to. They're on the website, hopefully in the comments. We'll get them out in the weekly news, as I think I mentioned. Now, these reports are submitted by a variety of lay leaders in the church, in addition to the staff, and they'll give you a sense of the variety of ministry around here. I want to thank the countless volunteers who have carried on so many different activities under challenging circumstances this year. I get pretty regular reports about mask making and cookie baking, phone calling, sending cards, and so much more. Del Boyette even made sure that we have art on the walls in the gallery this year. You all have been busy. And please do read what fellow parishioners have been up to and reach out to say thank you to each other for the good work and ministry. It's also, as you read through the annual reports, it's also an opportunity for each of us to get inspired about what we might like to join our efforts with. There may be a ministry that you read that speaks to you in a particular way, and we can always use new volunteers in a variety of areas. Also, everyone's just been so flexible and patient with some of the activities we've had to pause and that sort of thing. So there's been a collective spirit of, we'll do what we need to do and get through this together. But I'm sure we'll get back to all of our activities stronger than ever down the road. I do want to thank the Regathering Task Force in particular for their work this year. Dr. Becky Martin has worked with the staff and the wardens on safety issues throughout the pandemic, from how to worship safely to keeping everyone safe who needs to be in the building. That group will continue its work, especially when it comes time to prepare for in-person worship inside the church. Kind of jokingly, WWBD, or what would Becky do, has become a guiding question for me. And the task force has done great work to keep us all as safe as possible. So I want to thank them. All right, with that, I want to say a few words before I hand it over to Mallory Taylor for his treasurer's report. Mallory deserves our enthusiastic thanks for another year of service. And thank goodness he's willing to continue on as treasurer, which means our finances are in very good hands. I would also like to thank the finance and endowment committees who take excellent care of our resources. It is no small gift to have financially smart people keep their cool in a pandemic and focus on the long-term health of the parish. Mallory sets a really fantastic tone for that work. With that, I'd like to turn this Zoom over to Mallory for his report.
Thanks, Kate. Can you hear me okay? Good, great. All right, well, I'll first start off by saying welcome to my attic. This is where I've been holed up for the last 10 months or so, and trying to work, among other things. And I'm sure most all of you can probably relate to that as well, dealing with the past year. And as an aside, I've got a heating and air vent that is literally like 2 feet away from me on the wall. So if it kicks on and interrupts my audio here, I apologize for that. But so as Kate mentioned, I am going to cover the financials briefly, just make a few comments. I know, or I hope this is probably not the highlight of your day, listening to results of financial statements, but I appreciate all of you who tuned in to listen. And like I said, I promise I'll keep it brief. Before I get into the financials, I too want to thank a few people, the finance committee especially, and also the endowment committee. They do an outstanding job of keeping an eye on the assets of the church, and do a great job, especially this past year with the challenges we've had of making sure that the church is financially secure, and it is financially secure, and I'll get into that in just a minute. I also want to thank Carol Lou as well. It's no secret that Carol Lou is really the operation of this church, and I couldn't do any of the things that Kate asks me to do if it weren't for Carol Lou. So I appreciate her very much. And thank her as I do each year. And then lastly, I want to thank Kate for her leadership. Kate gives credit to us on the Finance Committee and the Endowment Committee, but it's really her steadfast leadership that has guided the church this past year and the past several years. And I do want to thank her as well, because Kate, I know the finances and the budgeting are probably the least favorite thing that you do, but you do a fantastic job at it. And I think there's a real a Janet Yellen in you. If she were to ever step down from the Federal Reserve, I think you'd be a great steady hand for the Fed Reserve. So moving on to the finances, I will just make a few comments about it. The church actually did well this past year. You can't overstate how challenging it has been for this country and for families. But I want the congregation to know that the church is in a good place financially. We, from the standpoint of our revenue, which is basically made up of pledges and gifts, we actually did a tiny bit better than we did in 2019. So, I think everyone would want to be aware of that and know that. And from a bottom line standpoint, the church actually did better than it did in 2019 as well. The bottom line is the church's net loss was about $6,000. Now we budgeted a loss of about $8,000. So we actually beat our budget and came in almost right in line with where we had set our expectations for the beginning of 2020. So, that in and of itself is a pretty amazing result. We did it by, as I mentioned, slightly growing our revenue, though we were behind on the budgeted revenue that we had hoped to get. But we were also able to, thanks to Kate and the Finance Committee, manage expenses throughout the year. And so we were able to come in at a place just slightly ahead of where we expected to be. And I think we can all appreciate that and be grateful for that, because certainly the circumstances could have been very different. The other thing I will say about last year's operations is the church's balance sheet is also in a very strong place. We were able to, as Kate mentioned, we were able to start making repairs that we needed to make. We were able to do most of the things that we really needed to do. And yet, even at the end of the year, our cash is still in a very strong place. We have a good cash balance, which means we have liquidity going into the first of this year. And that's always extremely important. I'll also say that on our balance sheet, the church's investments in the endowment have remained strong, thanks to the guidance and stewardship of the Endowment Committee and the work that our brokers do for us. We were able to get a nice return throughout the year on those assets. And so I want the congregation to have confidence that the church is fiscally strong and fiscally sound as we navigate through very uncertain times right now, certainly as we head into 2021. The last thing I'll mention is the budget for next year. We did, another thing that we do is we spend a lot of time toward the end of the year working on the budget with Kate and the vestry. And we took a very conservative approach with that. We would like to see the church growing, and we have seen some growth, but given the circumstances around what's going on right now, we took a very conservative approach with how we anticipate right now 2021 to go. And that anticipated budget will leave us at an expected loss of about 14,000. Now that's a little bit more than what the budget was for a loss in 2020. However, that's still significantly less than the budget deficit that we had in 2019. So we feel very comfortable with that, especially given the strength in our balance sheet. We feel like this budget will enable the church to continue to do the things that it wants and needs to do throughout 2021. So I want people to see that number. And even though it is a loss, I want folks to understand that that is an intended loss in the short term as we continue to grow and continue to look out for the best interests of the church moving ahead. And as Kate mentioned, we'll certainly, I'd love to entertain any questions that pop up in the chat or at the end. I'll be glad to answer any questions that I can. And again, I appreciate everybody listening in today. Kate, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, thanks, Mallory. That was a really helpful overview, snapshot of sort of where we've been in 2020 and what 2021 looks like to the best of our ability to predict. So thank you. And thank you for all your work watching over our funds. I would like to turn it over next to Dan Carter for the Senior Warden's Report. I saw Dan's little square somewhere.
I'm here. Am I unmuted? Can everybody hear me? Okay. Thank you, Kate. Although I've been a member of Christ Church well in excess of 25 years, I'm not a cradle Episcopalian. Coming to the Episcopal Church, I was intrigued by the use of the term warden used to designate certain officers of the vestry. Prior to my confirmation, I thought a warden was someone who ran a prison or gave you a fine if one violated hunting or fishing regulations. I've had the honor of serving as senior warden on 3 occasions, one year when Scott was rector and these past 2 years under Kate's leadership. One of my responsibilities is to prepare a report for the annual meeting. As I prepared this report, I decided to look into the use of the term warden. The dictionary defines warden as somebody responsible for the supervision of a particular place or thing and for ensuring that the regulations associated with that place are obeyed. The canons of the Episcopal Church call for 2 wardens from the ranks of the vestry, the senior warden and the junior warden. The senior warden is appointed by the rector and, as I learned from an unofficial source, sometimes referred to as the rector's warden, a term I was not familiar, but on reflection, I like. I have prepared a written report, more detailed, which should be in the materials distributed to you. I'm not going to repeat it. Should you be interested, I encourage you to read it. I'll touch briefly on a few items. We have a talented and hardworking group of people who serve on the vestry. The vestry meets monthly. Since April, the meetings have been via Zoom. The vestry does not view its job as micromanagers of the parish. Rather, our job is to help define and articulate the parish's mission, to support that mission, and to assure effective planning and organization, and to manage the financial resources of the parish. Sometimes ideas are developed by the by the vestry, but more often we are asked to comment, improve, and approve programming developed by the clergy and approved by the rector. It is an understatement to say that 2020 was a challenging year. As I note in my written report, and as Mallory has indicated, the parish was faithful in many respects, including pledging. 2021 will bring a new set of challenges as things gradually get back to normal. These challenges include the reopening of in-person worship, encouraging the return of some who may have gotten out of the habit and routine of worship, increasing membership, and meeting the goal of a step up in pledged income. While it may be challenging, I am confident that the future is promising due to all of our dedicated members, the elected leadership, and our clergy. It has been my privilege to serve as senior warden these past 2 years. Earlier, I told you I was not familiar with the term rector's warden. Whether that is a proper reference or not, it has certainly been an enjoyable privilege and a high honor to be the rector's warden. We are fortunate to have Kate as our rector. She is an intelligent, innovative, and tireless worker for Christ Church, and it's been my pleasure to serve with her. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Wow, well, I would just follow that by saying that our partnership in ministry has been one of the joys of my time as rector so far. So I really appreciate it, Dan. It's been great. Thank you so much for all you've done for me and for the parish. If this weren't a virtual meeting, I'd ask you all to join me in giving Dan a round of applause, but he's probably glad that I can't do that. Yeah, there we go, virtual applause. He's done such a great job. Thank you. I am pleased to announce that Marion Falk has agreed to serve as senior warden in 2021. Okay, so the last report goes to me, the rector's report. Frank Park always suggests that I keep it short. It seems like a good idea. And then we'll open it up for questions. So I imagine that the most pressing question you might have is when we will get back to worshiping together inside the church and gathering for all of our meetings and classes again in person. The short answer, this is a little tongue in cheek, but the short answer is whenever Becky says that we can. But the longer answer is that the church will be really in step with all of the other areas of our lives as we begin to gradually reconvene when the virus numbers have improved. And I imagine that this will be a process. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you now that when we open the red doors again, you are welcome to come in your slippers. Well, it's going to be a process. We'll have to get used to coming back to church. So just know, though, that we will continue to prioritize safety and balance that with our deep need for community and connection. And we'll get there. So we'll keep communicating about steps as best we can. As a bright spot, the church will be looking its best when we are able to gather back inside, thanks to the vestry's commitment and your generosity for repairing the interior. You might recall the large bit of ceiling that came down in the narthex one fateful rainy day, and all that crumbling plaster throughout the church. So the repairs are well underway, and the exterior is about as waterproof as we can make it. The church has been full of scaffolding and dust, but it's going to look fantastic. I'm really pleased that we've been able to get this work done without the disruption it would have meant to our regular worship life. So it was an interesting opportunity. It is not too late to donate to that project if you would like to help. But for now, we will continue to worship and meet primarily online. But that doesn't mean that ministry stops in any way. In fact, this is an ideal time to be discerning and dreaming about what comes next for our community. The vestry will meet soon to plan for 2021, and I also have some priorities in mind that I want to share with you. First, it will be important for us to re-engage the master planning process that we began shortly before the pandemic hit. You'll recall that the master plan has two main elements. The first is a thorough evaluation of our physical spaces so that we can make plans for keeping them up well and efficiently. And that makes sure that we spend our money wisely and don't defer maintenance, which would only become more expensive down the road. The plan will also include looking at our campus block and surrounding area to see how our built and landscaped environments might add more vitality and environmental stewardship to our part of downtown. But the planning process, I would say, is much more than HVAC units and waterproofing. It's also an opportunity for us to dream about, clarify, and articulate our mission and our vitality as a historic downtown Episcopal parish. It's therefore also about mission and ministry and how our facilities might better support those things. I can't wait to pick that process back up as soon as possible. And speaking of our downtown community, we do know that the pandemic, unfortunately, has created a great deal more food and housing insecurity in our neighborhood. So I invite you to watch the weekly announcements for opportunities for how you can help. And we say this from time to time in our weekly news, but it's worth saying out loud too, that if you are in a position of needing help, please do reach out to me, Hannah, or Reagan if you need anything. We're here to help. My second point in the rector's report, there's 3, so you know how far we are. I am really excited to offer an invitation to the whole Christ Church community. Now, many of you have already participated in Christ Church Commons, which are small groups that meet for a season for discussion and fellowship. We will be offering another round of virtual Commons this Easter season and fall, several rounds actually, with some very important and engaging content. We will offer the Sacred Ground curriculum, which is an extraordinary film-based dialogue series on race and faith. I had the opportunity to participate in Sacred Ground recently, which Marvin McLennan facilitated, and it's life-changing. We all have so much work to do on racial justice and healing, and this Episcopal curriculum is an important starting point for our community. So I invite the whole congregation to make a commitment to this series and to sign up for Commons when the invitation comes. It will be well worth your time, and I trust that it will lead us to some very important ministry here in downtown Little Rock. My third and final point has to do with a question we asked back in March when we had to close the church doors. We wondered about what it will be like when we look back on this strange and difficult time. What story will we tell about Christ Church during COVID-19? We are still writing that story, but I think a narrative is already emerging with some pretty clear elements. I remember something Reagan said, which I think captures it well. The story of Christ Church will not just be about how we survived, but how we thrived, even with a sense of adventure. How we loved each other, helped one another and our community, and how we prayed our way through it, even over the internet of all things. How we learned so much about what it means to be the church. Church before was pretty great, don't get me wrong. We had transcendent worship that we created together, and all those meetings and classes and outreach activities, not to mention the parties and the festive receptions, is all pretty great. But without those usual structures and routines, we will have lived into the church's fullness in new ways out of necessity. So with you, I look forward to recreating much of what we had before, but I also look forward to the new places that God will take us, because we will have been changed by what we're going through. Remember in the New Testament stories that resurrected life is connected to the life before, but it's always mysteriously new and changed. All we have to do is step into that future together with faith. And I have faith that the story of Christ Church that we tell one day will be pretty amazing. All right, that concludes my report, in addition to Dan's and Mallory's. And so I'm going to ask Marvin if he's got some questions for us from the floor.
So far, I don't see anything yet. Let me check our Facebook, and I don't see any there either. So,
Okay. If as you read through the annual reports, which I hope you do, if you reflect on this conversation that we've had this morning, if questions come up, please don't hesitate to reach out, and we'll respond. So, is there a motion from the floor to adjourn? I see some hands up. I think that counts as a motion and a second.
so moved.
So with my thanks for all of you for joining us this morning and taking good care for the life of Christ Church, I officially adjourn this meeting. Thank you all.